What would you sacrifice to save your children when every option seems impossible? In the unforgiving lands of the Old West, one woman makes a desperate choice that could forever change her fate and that of her children. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The scorching Texas sun beat down mercilessly on Sarah Walker as she trudged across the barren plains, her 2 young children clinging to her skirts. It had been 3 days since their wagon broke down, 3 days since they'd had a proper meal. Her husband Thomas, killed by raiders 2 months prior, would have known what to do, but he was gone, and Sarah was alone with 6-year-old Emma and 4-year-old James in Comanche territory. "Mama, I'm so thirsty," Emma whimpered, her once rosy cheeks now sunken and pale. Sarah knelt down, forcing a smile. "I know, darling. We'll find water soon." She offered her daughter the last drops from their canteen, keeping none for herself. The vast landscape stretched endlessly before them, the rolling hills shimmering in the heat. Sarah's vision blurred as exhaustion threatened to overcome her. They needed shelter, food, and water, in that order. The nearest settlement was at least 2 days' journey on foot, and she knew the children wouldn't make it. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Sarah spotted a thin column of smoke rising in the distance. Her heart raced with both hope and fear. Smoke meant people, but who those people might be remained uncertain. In these territories, encounters could mean salvation or death. "Children, we must be very quiet now," she instructed, gathering James into her arms despite her waning strength. "We're going to walk toward that smoke, but if I tell you to hide, you must do so immediately. Do you understand?" Both children nodded solemnly, their eyes wide with an understanding beyond their years. They had seen too much already: the attack that took their father, the burning of their homestead, the desperate flight westward that had brought them to this moment. As they approached the source of the smoke, Sarah's worst fears and greatest hopes collided. A Comanche camp spread across the valley below, with several teepees arranged in a semicircle around central fires. Men on horseback patrolled the perimeter while women worked around the camp, tanning hides and preparing food. Sarah froze, indecision paralyzing her. To turn back meant certain death from exposure and starvation. To approach meant placing their lives in the hands of a people who had every reason to distrust white settlers. In that moment, James collapsed against her shoulder, his little body burning with fever. The decision was made for her. "Stay close, Emma," Sarah whispered, adjusting her grip on her son. "Remember what I told you. If anything happens to me, you run. You run as fast as you can." With trembling legs, Sarah began the descent toward the camp. She had not gone 20 paces before she was spotted. 3 mounted warriors approached rapidly, their expressions unreadable as they circled her. One of them, a man with intricate tattoos across his chest and a single eagle feather in his hair, spoke sharply in Comanche. Sarah shook her head, indicating she didn't understand. Summoning her courage, she spoke clearly. "My children are starving and sick. We need help." The warriors exchanged glances. The one with the eagle feather dismounted and approached her, his dark eyes assessing. He reached out toward James, and Sarah instinctively tightened her grip. "He has fever," the warrior said in broken English, surprising her. "Camp has medicine." He gestured toward the settlement below, then back to his horse. Sarah understood the choice before her: trust this man and his people, or watch her children die in the wilderness. "I will work," she said desperately. "I will work in your fields, tend your fires, anything. Just feed my hungry children." The warrior studied her face for a long moment, then nodded once. He helped her mount his horse with James still clutched in her arms, while another warrior lifted Emma onto his steed. As they rode toward the camp, Sarah felt the eyes of the entire tribe upon them. An elderly woman emerged from the largest teepee as they arrived. Her face was weathered like ancient leather, her long silver braids adorned with beads. She spoke rapidly to the warrior with the eagle feather, who responded with evident respect. "My grandmother, 3 Moons," he explained to Sarah. "She is medicine woman. She helps sick boy." Sarah hesitated only briefly before allowing 3 Moons to take James from her arms. The old woman examined him quickly, her experienced hands gentle but thorough, before barking orders that set several younger women in motion. I am called Running Elk. The warrior with the eagle feather introduced himself. My grandmother says your son needs cooling and medicine. Your daughter needs food and rest. You too. Sarah nodded gratefully. I'm Sarah Walker. These are my children, James and Emma. Running Elk led them to a small teepee at the edge of the camp. Rest here. Food comes. Tomorrow we talk about work. As promised, a young woman soon arrived with a wooden bowl of stew and flatbread. Emma fell upon the food ravenously, while Sarah watched anxiously as 3 Moons tended to James in the neighboring teepee. That night, with her children finally sleeping safely beside her, Sarah stared at the apex of the teepee, where stars were visible through the smoke hole. She thought of Thomas and the life they had planned together. She thought of the settlers who would call her a traitor for seeking refuge with the Comanche, and she thought of Running Elk's unexpected kindness. Whatever tomorrow would bring, they had survived today. For now, that would have to be enough. Dawn broke over the Comanche camp, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. Sarah awoke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings of the teepee. Emma still slept soundly beside her, but James was missing. Panic surged through her until she remembered. 3 Moons had taken him to treat his fever. Sarah stepped outside, blinking against the early morning light. The camp was already bustling with activity. Women tended to cooking fires while children chased each other between the teepees. Men gathered near the horse corral, preparing for what looked like a hunting expedition. A young Comanche woman approached, carrying a clay pot of water and a small bundle. She couldn't have been more than 16, with intelligent eyes and a cautious smile. I am Sparrow, she said in surprisingly good English. 3 Moons sends me. Your son is better. Fever breaks in night. Relief washed over Sarah like a cooling rain. May I see him? Sparrow nodded. First wash, change clothes. She offered the bundle, these more suitable for work. Inside the bundle, Sarah found a simple deerskin dress, soft and well-worn, along with a pair of moccasins. Though she hesitated briefly, practicality won out. Her own tattered dress was hardly appropriate for the labor ahead. After washing and changing, Sarah woke Emma, and together they followed Sparrow to 3 Moons' teepee. James was sitting up on a pallet of furs, his cheeks still flushed but his eyes clear as he sipped from a small wooden cup. Mama, he cried upon seeing her. The medicine lady gave me special tea. It tastes like dirt, but it made the hot go away. Sarah rushed to embrace him, tears of relief stinging her eyes. 3 Moons watched from the corner, her wrinkled face impassive but her eyes kind. Thank you, Sarah said, turning to the elder. I don't know how I can repay your kindness. 3 Moons spoke in Comanche and Sparrow translated. She says your son has strong spirit. He fights the fever spirits well. She says you will work as you promised, and that is payment enough. Running Elk entered the teepee then, ducking his head beneath the entrance flap. My grandmother has convinced the council to let you stay, he explained. Not all are happy with this decision. Some remember too well the broken promises of white men. I understand, Sarah replied solemnly. I will honor my word. Running Elk nodded. Today you will work with the women gathering plants. Sparrow will show you which ones are good for food, which for medicine. Your daughter will stay with the children. Your son must rest one more day. Sarah hesitated, reluctant to leave her children among strangers. Reading her thoughts, Running Elk added, No harm will come to them here. This I promise you. Something in his steady gaze convinced Sarah to trust him. She knelt beside her children, explaining that she would be working nearby and that they should be respectful of their hosts. But Mama, Emma whispered, Father said the Comanche were dangerous. Sarah chose her words carefully. People fear what they don't understand, Emma. These people have shown us kindness when we needed it most. That deserves our gratitude, not our fear. As Sarah followed Sparrow to the edge of the camp where other women were gathering with baskets, she felt the weight of curious and suspicious stares. One woman in particular, whose face bore a long scar from temple to jaw, watched her with open hostility. That is Stoneheart, Sparrow explained quietly. Her husband and son were killed by white soldiers 2 winters ago. She does not welcome you. Sarah nodded in understanding. I would feel the same in her position. The day passed in a blur of unfamiliar tasks. Sarah learned to identify edible roots and berries, to dig them efficiently without damaging the plants. Her hands, once soft from a genteel upbringing in St. Louis, quickly grew raw and blistered, yet she worked without complaint, determined to prove her worth. By midday, the sun beat down relentlessly. The women stopped to rest in the shade of a cottonwood grove, passing around water skins and dried meat. Most kept their distance from Sarah, conversing in Comanche and casting occasional glances her way. Sparrow, however, remained by her side. "You work hard," she observed. "Not like other white women we have seen." "What other white women have you known?" Sarah asked. 2 winters ago, Army men attack our winter camp. They take 3 women captive. Later we trade horses to get them back. They cry always, refuse to work, call us savages. Sparrow's expression darkened. "One try to run away. Stoneheart's husband find her, bring her back. White soldiers kill him for this." Sarah absorbed this information silently, understanding better the undercurrent of tension in the camp. "My people have done terrible things," she admitted, "but not all of us are the same, just as I'm sure not all Comanche are the same." Sparrow considered this. "Perhaps. Running Elk says you have honest eyes. He lost wife and baby to white man's coughing sickness, yet he speaks for you in council. This is unusual." Before Sarah could respond, a cry went up from the direction of the camp. The women gathered their baskets quickly, faces tense with alarm. "Riders coming," Sparrow explained, helping Sarah to her feet. "Many horses. Could be traders, could be soldiers." Fear clutched at Sarah's heart as they hurried back toward the camp. Her children were there, vulnerable. If these were soldiers, what would happen to them all? As they crested the hill overlooking the encampment, Sarah saw a cloud of dust approaching from the east, at least 20 mounted men. The Comanche warriors had formed a defensive line, while women hurriedly gathered children into the teepees. Running Elk rode out to meet Sarah and the gathering party. "Take your children and stay in my grandmother's teepee," he instructed urgently. "Do not come out until I call for you." "Who are they?" Sarah asked, scanning the horizon anxiously. Running Elk's expression was grim. "Texas Rangers. They hunt a war party that raided a settlement 3 days ago. If they find you here—" He didn't need to finish the thought. Sarah understood all too well. To the Rangers, a white woman living among the Comanche would be seen as a traitor. Or worse, they might rescue her against her will, separating her from the only people who had shown her kindness when she needed it most. As Sarah hurried to 3 Moons Tipi where her children waited, she realized with startling clarity that her fate was now inextricably bound with that of the Comanche. In the span of just 1 day, these enemies had become her reluctant protectors, and soon she would have to choose where her loyalties truly lay. Inside 3 Moons Tipi, Sarah held her children close, listening to the commotion outside. Emma trembled against her side while James, still weak from his fever, dozed fitfully. 3 Moons sat cross-legged by the small central fire, her weathered hands methodically grinding herbs with a stone mortar, seemingly unbothered by the tension that filled the air. "Will the bad men take us away?" Emma whispered, her small fingers clutching Sarah's borrowed deerskin dress. Sarah stroked her daughter's hair. "No, sweetheart. Running Elk promised to protect us." Even as she spoke the reassuring words, doubt gnawed at her. The Texas Rangers were notorious for their brutal efficiency in dealing with what they deemed Indian problems. If they discovered her and her children in the Comanche camp, they would certainly try to rescue them, forcibly if necessary. Through the thin walls of the teepee, Sarah could hear the distant sound of men's voices, too far to distinguish words, but close enough to recognize the cadence of English rather than Comanche. The negotiations had begun. 3 Moons suddenly spoke, her voice like dry leaves rustling. Sparrow, who had joined them in the teepee, translated, "She says you must decide now where you stand. If Rangers search camp, they will find you. You must choose. Go with them and leave your children to our care until you can return, or stay and risk their anger." "Leave my children?" Sarah gasped. "Never." 3 Moons nodded as if satisfied with her answer, then continued speaking. "She says there is a third path," Sparrow translated. "You become Comanche in the eyes of the Rangers, but this path has no return." The old woman reached into a small parfleche bag and withdrew a bundle wrapped in soft rabbit fur. Unwrapping it, She revealed a mixture of dark pigments and a small bone needle. Face marks, Sparrow explained. Temporary, but will fool rangers from distance. They will see only Comanche woman with Comanche children. Sarah understood immediately. The distinctive facial tattoos of Comanche women were well known among settlers. With such markings, even temporary ones, she would be seen as a native woman, not a white captive. The sound of hoofbeats grew closer. Time was running out. Do it, Sarah decided, straightening her back. Make us Comanche. With surprising gentleness, Three Moons applied the mixture to Sarah's face, using the bone needle to create intricate patterns across her cheekbones and chin. The pigment stung slightly, but Sarah remained still, watching as Emma bravely offered her face next. And finally, the sleeping James received subtle markings. Now close, Three Moons instructed through Sparrow. She produced a small knife and quickly made strategic cuts and tears in Sarah's deerskin dress, then rubbed dirt into the fabric. Rangers look for clean white woman, not dirty Comanche. Sarah nodded in understanding. To complete the disguise, Three Moons unbound Sarah's light brown hair, working strands of black horsehair into her braids to darken their appearance. Keep head down, Sparrow advised. Do not speak English. If they point at you, act afraid and angry. The transformation was barely complete when the teepee flap was thrust aside. Running Elk entered, his expression taut with controlled tension. Rangers demand to search camp, he said tersely. Their leader, a man called Captain Hayes, claims we harbor raiders who attacked settlers near Fort Griffin. His eyes widened slightly at Sarah's altered appearance, but he recovered quickly. Good. Very good. But they must not see your eyes up close. The blue will betray you. What should we do? Sarah asked, her heart pounding. You will sit with the other women by the cooking fires. Keep the children close. Work with your hands and do not look up. He hesitated, then added, if they try to approach you directly, Three Moons will create a distraction. The elderly woman nodded grimly, her hand moving to a pouch at her waist that Sarah suspected contained more than just medicinal herbs. Sarah gathered her courage. Thank you, Running Elk. I won't forget this kindness. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Perhaps surprise, perhaps something more. My people have a saying. A life saved creates a debt that flows both ways. You owe us nothing, Sarah Walker. With that, he ducked out of the teepee. Moments later, Sparrow led Sarah and her children to join a group of women tending cooking fires near the center of the camp. Sarah kept her head bowed, focusing intensely on the task of grinding corn as Sparrow had shown her. Emma sat beside her, mimicking her movements with a smaller stone, while James curled up against her side, his eyes heavy with residual fever. Through lowered lashes, Sarah observed the rangers as they moved through the camp. 6 men remained mounted, rifles at the ready, while Captain Hayes and 3 others dismounted to conduct the search. Hayes was a tall man with a sandy mustache and cold eyes that missed nothing. He spoke with Running Elk through a half-Mexican interpreter, his hand never straying far from his holstered revolver. The rangers methodically inspected each teepee, emerging from each with increasing frustration evident in their postures. When they approached the cooking area, Sarah's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped the grinding stone. Keep working, Sparrow murmured beside her. They see only what they expect to see. Captain Hayes stopped directly before their group, his shadow falling across Sarah's workspace. She could feel his gaze sweeping over them, assessing. Ask him about white captives, Hayes instructed the interpreter. Any settlers taken in the raids. The interpreter relayed the question to Running Elk, who responded with a dismissive gesture toward the women. He says they take no captives, only their own women here. Hayes wasn't satisfied. He stepped closer, and Sarah's blood froze when his boots entered her field of vision. He was standing directly before her. This one has lighter skin, he observed suspiciously. And the child, too. Before the interpreter could translate, Three Moons suddenly cried out, clutching her chest and collapsing to the ground in what appeared to be a seizure. The camp erupted in commotion as women rushed to the elder's aid, creating a barrier between Sarah and the ranger captain. Running Elk used the distraction to step between Hayes and Sarah's group. My grandmother needs medicine, he said urgently. Our search is done. You find nothing because there is nothing to find. Hayes hesitated, his shrewd eyes narrowing as he looked past Running Elk towards Sarah, who kept her face averted. For one terrible moment, Sarah thought he would push through the gathering crowd to reach her. Instead, he spat on the ground. "Tell him we'll be watching," Hayes instructed the interpreter. "Any raid, any attack on settlers, we'll be back. And next time we won't be so civil." The Rangers departed as they had arrived, in a cloud of dust and ill will. Only when they were dots on the horizon did Sarah finally exhale, her entire body trembling with the aftermath of fear. 3 Moons, remarkably recovered from her apparent seizure, sat up and exchanged knowing looks with Running Elk. That evening, as the camp settled back into an uneasy rhythm, Running Elk found Sarah sitting outside her teepee, watching her children sleep within. The temporary facial markings had been washed away, but something fundamental had shifted. "Why did you help us?" Sarah asked quietly. "You could have turned us over to the Rangers. It would have been easier." Running Elk sat beside her, his gaze fixed on the distant hills where the sun was setting in a blaze of orange and purple. "Many winters ago, white settlers killed my father. I was young, filled with hate. I raided, I killed, I took scalps." His voice was matter of fact, not seeking absolution. "One day, I attacked a farmhouse. Inside was a woman like you, with small children. Fear in her eyes, same as yours when we found you. Something stopped my hand that day." He turned to look at her directly. "The woman offered me food, water for my journey. Said her children needed to see that mercy can exist between enemies. I did not understand then. Perhaps I begin to understand now." Sarah absorbed his words, recognizing the rare gift of his honesty. "My husband believed all Indians were savages," she admitted. "He died believing that. I'm beginning to see how wrong we both were." "Your husband? He was killed by Comanche?" Running Elk asked carefully. Sarah shook her head. "No, white raiders, deserters from both armies. They attacked our homestead, took everything we had." She swallowed hard against the memory. "Thomas tried to stop them. They shot him in front of us, burned our home. We've been wandering ever since, trying to reach my sister in California." Running Elk was silent for a long moment. "The path to California is long and dangerous, especially for a woman alone with small ones." "I know," Sarah sighed. "But what choice do I have?" He didn't answer immediately, and when he finally spoke, his words took her by surprise. "The council meets tonight. I will speak for you again. Perhaps your path need not take you so far from here, Sarah Walker." As he walked away, Sarah wondered at his meaning. For the first time since Thomas's death, she allowed herself to consider a future different from the one she had planned. A future where her children might grow up understanding both worlds. A bridge between peoples who saw each other only as enemies. It was a dangerous hope, perhaps even a foolish one. But as stars began to pepper the darkening sky, Sarah held that fragile hope close to her heart. The council fire burned bright against the night sky, casting long shadows across the faces of the Comanche elders gathered in a solemn circle. Sarah sat apart, as tradition dictated for one who was not of the tribe, yet close enough to hear the proceedings. Running Elk stood at the center, his powerful voice carrying as he addressed the council in Comanche. Though Sarah couldn't understand his words, she recognized when he gestured toward her and her children, who slept nearby under 3 Moons' watchful eye. Stoneheart rose in opposition, her scarred face contorted with grief and anger as she spoke passionately. Others joined the debate, some nodding in agreement with Running Elk, others shaking their heads vehemently. The discussion continued late into the night, voices rising and falling like the prairie wind. Finally, as the fire burned low, the eldest of the council, a man so ancient his face resembled dried leather, raised his hand for silence. He spoke briefly, his voice barely above a whisper, yet all leaned forward to catch his words. When he finished, a collective murmur spread through the gathering. Running Elk approached Sarah as the council dispersed. His expression was guarded, revealing nothing of the decision. "The council has spoken," he said simply. "You and your children may stay until the first snow. By then you must decide. Continue your journey to California, or—" he paused, choosing his words carefully, "or become part of our people in truth, not just in appearance." Sarah's heart quickened. "Become part of your people? Is that even possible?" "It has happened before. Rarely." Running Elk's gaze was steady. "The old ones remember a time when our tribe took in those from other nations, even those with white skin. It would not be easy. Stoneheart and others will not accept you quickly, if ever. But for the children, he glanced toward the sleeping forms of Emma and James. For them, there could be a life here. The possibility stunned Sarah. She had never imagined such an option. To remain with the Comanche, to learn their ways, to give her children a home among people she had been raised to fear. It seemed both impossible and somehow right. "I need time to think," she whispered. Running Elk nodded. Until first snow. The weeks that followed took on a rhythm Sarah had never known. Each day brought new lessons. How to set up and break down a teepee for the frequent moves that characterized Comanche life. How to prepare pemmican for winter stores. How to tan hides until they were soft as cloth. Her hands grew calloused, her skin bronzed by the sun. The work was hard but satisfying in a way her previous life had never been. Emma and James adapted more quickly than she had dared hope. Within days, Emma was playing with the Comanche children, learning their games and picking up words in their language with the remarkable facility of childhood. James, fully recovered from his fever, toddled after the older boys, watching wide-eyed as they practiced with small bows. Stoneheart remained coldly distant, but others in the tribe gradually warmed to Sarah's presence. Sparrow became a true friend, patiently explaining customs and correcting Sarah's attempts at speaking Comanche. Three Moons took a particular interest in teaching Sarah about medicinal plants, nodding with approval when Sarah's quick mind retained the information. And then there was Running Elk. He kept a respectful distance, yet Sarah often caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. Sometimes he brought special treats for the children, a honeycomb wrapped in leaves, or a carved wooden horse for James. Once when Sarah struggled to lift a heavy waterskin, he appeared silently beside her, taking the burden without comment. Summer faded into autumn, painting the prairie with gold and russet. The tribe moved their camp to traditional winter grounds near a sheltered valley where game was plentiful. Sarah learned to ride properly, no longer clinging fearfully to the saddle, but moving in rhythm with her horse as the Comanche did. One crisp afternoon, as Sarah gathered firewood at the edge of camp, she encountered Stoneheart doing the same. They worked in silence for several minutes before the Comanche woman suddenly spoke, her English broken but comprehensible. "My husband, Gray Wolf, was kind man. Like Running Elk, he believed peace possible between our peoples." Stoneheart's scarred face remained impassive. "Soldiers kill him anyway. Kill my son too." Sarah set down her bundle of wood. "I'm deeply sorry for your loss." Stoneheart studied her. "Running Elk says you lost husband too. White men kill him." "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "Raiders killed him and burned our home." Stoneheart nodded slowly. "Grief same color for all women." She hesitated, then added, "Your boy reminds me of my son, same laugh." It wasn't forgiveness or acceptance, but it was an acknowledgement of shared humanity, the first Stoneheart had offered. Sarah recognized the significance of the moment. "Thank you for telling me about your family," she said quietly. "I would have liked to know them." Stoneheart picked up her wood bundle and walked away without responding, but something had shifted between them, a hairline crack in a wall of hostility. That evening, as the tribe gathered for the evening meal, Three Moons beckoned Sarah to sit beside her, an honor not previously extended. The old woman spoke at length, with Sparrow translating. "She says you learn well for a white woman," Sparrow relayed with a small smile. "Your hands know the work now, not just your head. She says she has watched your heart too. It opens to our ways." Sarah felt a flush of pride at the elder's approval. "She asks if you have decided," Sparrow continued. "The first snow will come soon." All eyes turned to the western horizon, where dark clouds were gathering. The first winter storm was approaching, perhaps only days away. Sarah's time for decision was running out. Later that night, unable to sleep, Sarah slipped out of her teepee. The camp was quiet, with only the guards alert around the perimeter. She walked to a small rise overlooking the valley, wrapping her buffalo robe tightly against the chill. "The storm comes tomorrow," Running Elk's voice came from behind her. "Our weather readers are never wrong." Sarah wasn't startled by his appearance. Somehow she had sensed he would find her here. "Then I must give my answer tomorrow." He stood beside her, his profile strong against the star-filled sky. "And what will you say, Sarah Walker?" She turned to face him fully. If we stay, what becomes of us? Will my children truly be accepted as Comanche? Will I always be seen as an outsider? The path will not be easy, he admitted. Some, like Stoneheart, may never fully accept you. But the children, he smiled faintly, they already speak our language better than you. They play our games, learn our stories. In time, few will remember they were not born Comanche. And me? Sarah asked softly. Running Elk was silent for a long moment. You could take a place in the tribe. As a healer, perhaps. 3 Moons sees gift in you. He hesitated, then added, or as a wife. The word hung in the night air between them. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Are you offering, Running Elk? His dark eyes held hers steadily. If you choose to stay, if you choose our way of life, then yes. I would offer you the protection of my name, the shelter of my teepee. His voice softened. And in time, perhaps, something more. Sarah thought of Thomas, of the life they had planned together. She would always honor his memory, always love what they had shared. But he was gone, and she was still here, still breathing, still responsible for 2 small lives that depended on her choices. I need to think, she said finally. Until tomorrow. Running Elk nodded, respecting her need for solitude. As he turned to leave, Sarah called after him. Thank you for everything you've done for us. Whatever I decide, I will never forget your kindness. He paused, looking back at her. It is not kindness, Sarah Walker. It is recognition of strength, yours and mine. We have both lost much. Perhaps together, we find new path. The next morning dawned gray and heavy with impending snow. The entire tribe was busy with final preparations for winter, securing teepees, gathering extra firewood, checking food stores. Sarah worked alongside them, her mind still churning with her decision. By midday, the first snowflakes began to fall, large, lazy flakes that melted upon landing. But soon they came faster, thicker, beginning to accumulate on the ground. 3 Moons appeared at Sarah's side, her ancient eyes questioning. Sarah looked at her children, playing happily with their Comanche friends, oblivious to the significance of the falling snow. She thought of the long, dangerous journey to California, of the uncertain welcome that might await them there. She thought of the new skills her hands had learned, the new strength her spirit had found among these people she had once feared. And she thought of Running Elk, not as a savior or protector, but as a man who had recognized in her something worth honoring. Sarah turned to 3 Moons and spoke carefully in the Comanche she had been learning. My children and I stay. We become people. 3 Moons' weathered face creased in a rare smile. She took Sarah's hand and led her to the center of the camp where Running Elk stood watching the snowfall. When he saw them approach, understanding dawned in his eyes. You have decided, he stated simply. Sarah nodded. My path leads here now, Running Elk. If your offer still stands, my children and I would be honored to join your family. He extended his hand, palm up, not to take hers, but offering a choice. Sarah placed her hand in his without hesitation. As the snow fell more heavily around them, blanketing the prairie in pristine white, Sarah felt a sense of rightness settle in her soul. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be hardships, misunderstandings, and prejudices to overcome. But here, in this place, with these people, her children would grow strong. They would learn to bridge 2 worlds, to carry forward the best of both. And perhaps, in their small way, they would help weave a new pattern, one where enemies could become family, where differences could be honored rather than feared, where a desperate plea from a starving mother could transform into an unexpected journey home. As Running Elk led Sarah back to where Emma and James played in the falling snow, their small faces alight with wonder, Sarah whispered a final farewell to the woman she had been and welcomed the woman she was becoming. The snow continued to fall, erasing old tracks and creating a clean slate upon which new stories could be written.